Hello. How are you doing, Sarah?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good. So this is our third session, everybody. If this is your first time joining us, somewhere on this page, there will be the previous two that we've done. So tonight, this is all about research. Please don't let that bore you, please. Tonight, hopefully me and Sarah are going to help you be able to dissect a paper so that it actually makes a bit of sense. Is that the plan, Sarah?
Yeah, I think we actually titled this Getting Your Bearings, which I really, really liked. Because as Sarah Jane said, we have gone through the finding the paper, what is the question? And I suppose the next stop in our journey is you found the paper. So what are you looking for? How do you know it's the right paper? Are you wasting your time reading through the entire paper and then realizing that it's not what you need? So Sarah Jane, you will bring us through the paper, hopefully, and then
hopefully we'll make a bit of sense of it and not bore everybody to tears. But
yeah,
I don't know if you remember, Sarah, back at maybe your undergrad or masters, that when you first did your search, and if any of them have done the search that we showed you how to do, goodness, that was before Christmas. We did that show, Sarah.
we did,
What you might have found is that you ended up with lots and lots of papers, like hundreds, maybe even thousands.
Yeah.
So that can be a little bit daunting. Now, Sarah, do you read all of those papers?
Well, no, well, you know yourself at the beginning, you just start like clicking into the first option and reading it, and then you're like, oh, I actually don't need this. And then you move on. And I think that's one of the really daunting parts, is because it's so time consuming, and you're not finding what you actually need. And again, you just kind of go, oh, right, okay, I'm done with this. This is just a waste of my time. So I think it's a really big barrier to grabbing the evidence or the question you really want answered.
And you end up going down that rabbit hole, don't you? So you end up like,
Yes,
and like off in some weird tangents, and ending up 3 hours have passed and you're not any the wiser. Um,
exactly.
so hopefully we can help you out a bit with that tonight. So the plan, Sarah, am I right? I'm going to share my screen. We're going to we'll just open up some papers that are sadly on my desktop. Or my reference management software. That's currently doing my PhD for any that don't know that, just because I clearly hate myself. It's a form of hurting oneself, I think.
No, I
so
knew you
these
were the best to go through it because you're in the middle of it. So I said, you start us off.
Okay. So Sarah's going to kind of just ask me, we're going to just go with this, and hopefully if you have any questions, people watching, just jump in, ask away. But hopefully the search that we showed you how to do the last time, you've had a wee play. If you haven't, go back and watch it. We took you through PubMed, we took you through how to do an advanced search, how to search for papers, and it really is an amazing skill to have. Because before we maybe go on to this, put a bit of context. I was saying to Sarah just before we jumped on about the audience and who's watching this. And in my head, it's either students who are still at university, or it is clinicians that are working in practice. And I have my own private practice. And a few years ago, we brought in PRP, so platelet-rich plasma injections into the clinic. And the evidence, well, let's talk about, so there was no protocols, right? There was no set, this is what you do. And so I needed to create a protocol for the clinic and for my, why was I going to do this treatment? How often should my patients come? How often should I inject? How much should I inject? How do I know I've got the right amount of platelets? What is the right amount? What's the best extraction? What's the best system? All I had was questions. So I needed to find those answers. And that's where the research came in. I went searching and I went reading and I looked at the evidence that was out there. And that then allowed me to use that to build the best protocol for my practice. So you can do that with no matter plantar fasciopathy, tendinopathy, rehab, fungal nail treatments. You can then be looking at the evidence that's out there and then utilizing that within your private practice. Does that, I don't know, I get excited about that.
No, absolutely. Because, I suppose we are at an exciting part of our profession where we are seeing that increase in research getting churned out, that maybe historically we'd have to look at other professions' research and then take from that what we needed. Whereas now we're actually seeing podiatry specific or lower limb specific rehab treatment options, all the things you've just said. So it's now our chance to use it. It is there. And also, as you said, for people or students or clinicians, if in any way we can kind of help your search be narrowed a little bit and help kind of you focus your time and your questions, it just makes it that little bit easier, and then you're more likely to keep doing it. And like Sarah Jane has said, start protocols for nearly everything. So, and you'll see clinical benefits as well.
Massively.
Yeah.
I know it's boring, right? It can seem daunting, and the papers are dry because they're written in they're academic papers. But once you get into it, there's a system to them. And we'll go through that tonight. So we'll show you how to very quickly get what you're looking for, and quickly disregard the stuff that's not what you're looking for. So we just bring up a paper and start.
Bring it up. Yeah, let's
No
go.
matter what the paper is, right? So thanks, Michael. He's brought this up, right? So before I start rabbiting on, hopefully I don't lose you all here, right? This is this is my desktop. So right now I'm doing my PhD, and it's specifically rheumatoid patients. It's my PhD's got a it's diagnostic ultrasound, and I'll also be incorporating biomechanics within it. So those are like, so think about that, rheumatoid patients, ultrasound, and biomechanics. So those are my three big key things. So I read a lot about them. So I'm maybe looking at specific things. So for this particular paper here, I was looking for foot models, because I'm trying to build out a protocol for analysing how the foot is moving, and I'm going to be marketing up their foot. So I needed to start reading around the literature to see what's already there. Does that make sense? So when you actually start looking for papers, you need to have an idea of what is it I'm looking for. So when I did it for my clinic for PRP, it was I needed to find what was getting utilised out there in the world, what was out there, what evidence was there, and find that. So
you had your big question. You had that one thing.
Yeah. I had an idea of what I'm looking for, right? And that then helps you with your search that we did the last time. But here I found this paper. Now, I'm looking at this in a reference management software. Now, I don't want to blow your brains away, but basically, it's just a place where you can keep yourself organised, right? So this reference management software, if anybody's interested, is called Zotero. It's free, and it just keeps all your papers organised. I can write wee notes in it, so you can see I've got wee notes on the side here. I can tag things, so if I'm searching for something, I can basically just organise myself quite easily. And then all my papers, if I click there, like, let's not scare you, I know that looks like a Doug's dinner, but essentially everything's all in one place, and I can put them into wee folders and things as well. So I'm organised. So let's open up that paper. Now, I should say, if I go back there, you can see that the wee PDF sign on the far right-hand column there. That means that I've pulled that PDF up into this. So it's just a nice place to keep yourself organised. So if you have papers that you like looking at or referring back to, having somewhere that isn't just a file on your computer can really help you just organise your brain a bit. And especially if you are doing research like in your undergrad or a master's level or PhD, you need a system. So in terms of looking at this paper, right, so this is a review, and it's looking at the relevance of ultrasound examination in the foot and ankle in patients that have got rheumatoid arthritis. And it's a literature review, right? Basically, this is somebody that's went, right, I need to review what's out there. So that's that one. And then the other one that we looked at was the kinematics analysis of a multi-segment foot model. So this was the one I was telling you about the biomechanics. So let's stay with this one, may as well. So the first bit you've got in your paper is the abstract. So Sarah, I suppose you can fire away questions at me in this. Yep. That first bit is that abstract. So how do you use the abstract? And then maybe I'll talk about what
so I really try, and so I will skim through the abstract. I suppose when we talk about like what is an abstract usually just summarizes the investigation, why they're looking at what they're looking at. It can summarize the methods, the findings, and the conclusions. So you're getting them in like bite-size sentences. You're not getting any of the background information. You're not getting any of the overview or other findings. So I really tread through that abstract very carefully. And sometimes I even try and skip it. It depends how stuck for time I am. But I get a lot of students that would kind of say to me like, oh, I read the abstract and it didn't suit. So what would be, I suppose, your response to that? If someone said to you, well, I've read the abstract and I don't know.
So again, it comes down to, God, in this sense, this is a typical answer, isn't it? We all research. It just depends.
Yeah. Very diplomatic, very diplomatic.
Most student wants to hear that. I know you don't want to hear that, but it really does. There's never a right or wrong answer. There's always a shade of grey there. So an abstract is exactly what it sounds like. It is just that very kind of brief summary. It's like if you were looking at the picture of something, it just gives you an idea about what's going on. It's usually a maximum of 250 words, and it's basically got the purpose of the study in there, and also the methods used, the results, and the conclusions in a very small wee bit. So generally, if you had like loads of papers, that say you had hundreds of papers, you thought, oh my good God, if you're extracting, so the stuff that you don't need is the abstract is usually as far as you would go. It just depends. You might get a wee bit further, but the abstract almost is like the teaser in. It just gives you a wee quick analysis of what's actually the paper's about. So that might entice you to click in and look further, or it might be an immediate not relevant. So it's a
Okay.
good way. It can be used to eliminate papers if you can tell very quickly if it's of no use, or it's just a good way to kind of get a wee idea of, okay, is this worth reading further? Because sometimes you end up with so many results that you need to
Work through them.
very easily work through them. So it just gives you an idea of what the paper's about. So it's got inside there the main points, it's got the purpose of the study, it's got the methods that are used in the study, the results of the study, and the conclusions all in a very short, but it's got no detail in that. So
you would say kind of when you've done your bigger search that we talked about last time, you
yeah.
then would look at your title. So make sure that obviously there's a key word there that links into your question. And then you'd advise someone, look, read through the abstract and just see, is it something that is similar to what you're looking for? If not, away it goes.
Yeah, and it might not, yeah, exactly, but it might not be similar. It might just have, so for example, if I was looking for a particular method style, it might not even be the right area of the body or the right study
Yeah.
type, but it might be utilizing a certain method, and we'll get to that in a minute in case you're like, what do you even mean method? But it might be doing something that I can extract information from. So it depends.
Yeah, but if you're trying to simplify
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
have a quick read. I think the keyword section as well is really handy because
Mm,
like that you're kind of going, oh, that's 2 or 3 of the things I'm also looking for. So I
yeah.
think between those bits we can kind of go, okay, yes or no. I know there's a big gray area in the middle, but if we were to simplify it, could you say that the abstract gives you enough information?
I think it gives you a good idea of whether you want to read a wee bit further, yeah. And definitely the keywords are an absolute, as I like to say, Bobby Dazzler. That means good.
It's a new one for me.
It's a proper Glaswegian.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
But
I don't think it'd come out of my mouth properly, but sounds good when you say it.
keywords, and Sarah really hit the nail on the head actually there with the keywords. That's a great tip, especially if you're a student and you're looking for the right things to search. Always keep a note of the keywords that reference papers that are relevant to the stuff that you're doing, because that would be part of your search strategy. So that will mean it doesn't matter if you're a clinician, don't worry about that. But certainly if you're doing undergrad or master's, certainly PhD, the keywords and having that bank of terms is something that you really want to build up a bank of, so that when you're searching, you've got those specific keywords to search so that you get a brilliant result. So keywords are, yeah, they're great. And it gives you an idea of what's it about? What's the
Yeah.
main things? So yeah, definitely. Well, we move on to introduction.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the introduction of a paper. I know that sounds so embarrassing. But I just love the kind of background information, and I really kind of, it sets the scene for me. And I suppose that's probably
Mhm.
coming more from an academic side. I'd be kind of going, I love an introduction first line. I love seeing how the researcher has tried to grab your attention. But yes, that's how I'd explain an introduction. Give me background. So what brought the researcher to come up with the idea? I think that's
Yeah, that is it. And it's exactly that. The introduction is, it basically gives an overview of the topic, the research question, and a background of why this research was even conducted in the first place. But it can be used to go a wee bit deeper. So, say, for example, you were maybe wanting to learn about something. So, they'll give you background, and then within that, they'll have referenced where they've got that information from. So, see
yeah.
if you look in any paper, you'll have like, so that's kind of referenced in Harvard reference style. So, if you see it just like 1997, now this is an old paper, right? But So these things here are references. I'm hoping I'm teaching you to suck eggs here, hopefully. But then at the end, we'll get to the reference sections in a minute. But what that can sometimes do, actually going and then looking up those references, can really give you a good, better understanding and depth of understanding. So if you're really trying to get your head around something, actually backtracking, almost picking back, can really help you understand what it is you're reading about. So I do a lot of that, almost like reverse engineering some papers, especially if it's something that I'm not familiar with, that I'm trying to get my head around, or just the process of what they've done, of how they've got there. So I don't know if do you do stuff like that, Sarah?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when, like, for example, now if I was kind of creating a new rehabilitation program, or I was dealing with an injury that I wasn't as familiar with. Okay, so you get your referral in and it's an injury that you're going, right, okay, not as familiar with this. I will then look up a paper, go into the introduction, and then I want that basic background information on this injury before you even get into kind of the conservative versus surgical treatment, or what route we'd be going down, or are we going orthotic therapy, footwork. Like, there's so many ways we could go after that, but I actually want to go back to, wait, what is the injury again? What's the mechanism of injury, and what structures are affected and why? So definitely that's why, again, I just love an introduction, which is
no, it does. It really sets the scene. And especially, see those of you that are watching this that are maybe undergrad, that are thinking about your dissertations coming up, or if you've got an essay to write, you probably loads of essays to write. It can give you, this is technically, see your introduction, that's always going to be how your introduction will be structured in an essay or your dissertation. So this sort of, get used to writing this way and reading this way and seeing how they reference and how they're linking it all up and bringing this all together to make sense. The introductions, you can get so much information from it, not just specifically about the actual paper, but other things that set in the scene, and learn from it. I learn way more from reading journals than I do textbooks. I love a journal. Textbooks kind of annoy me.
Didn't we say our first meeting that, like, once the textbook is published, it's out of date?
It's out of date, yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose a reference paper is as well, Sarah, but you're continuously adding to that. That's that body of evidence, and you can then go and find, and I'll show you some cool stuff later tonight where we can do that. But that's the introduction.
Yep.
Methods is next, Sarah.
Oh yeah.
So methods is probably the one that probably doesn't mean an awful lot to people if you think about it. Methods, what does that mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially when you're like, well, what, again, it goes back to what is your question and what do you need to know? So I suppose when I think of methods, and again, there's more to it, I'm kind of looking at, is it qualitative or is it quantitative? And again,
so explain what that is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so with qualitative, I think of it like as quality of opinion, which isn't necessarily right. It's just how I remember. And I love those kind of studies if they're looking at like patient perception or podiatrist perception on something. So I want to hear these people's opinions. I want to hear actual analysis of their interviews or them talking or their opinions. When I look
at a qualitative study, just to recap on what Sarah's saying, is that qualitative is where the study will have done like a survey and asked people, or that might have been in interviews that have taken place or something like that. So if you've never heard the term qualitative, that's all it means. It just means it's a particular style, it's a particular method of gathering data, so to speak.
And it's appropriate when it comes to, like, you want to know patients' opinions on something, like, say, for example, on orthotic therapy and footwear. You want to know what patients are thinking so that you can then, make them feel better at, like, in the way that you'd be kind of addressing those concerns and things like that. That's when I want qualitative methodology. And again, you're going, wait, what's that word again? But basically, it's more just that I want to hear their opinions more so than needing kind of measurements and all of that.
And sometimes you'll see studies that will say a qualitative assessment of, and all that, that's all that means. It just means that they've been surveyed or they've filled in something or they've had an interview or something like that. So I think sometimes it just seems like a big barrier because it seems like a really weird word, but that's all qualitative means. So quantitative is more data driven.
Yeah, that's where people cringe and they hear statistics and they hear all that. However, we're not going in that today. What we were just saying is that, again, if you think about how qualitative is appropriate for certain questions, quantitative will also be appropriate. And that's where, again, we're looking at, ankle dorsiflexion maybe, and you want to look at different measurements or different correlations between measurements. But again, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to let Sarah Jane jump in, make sure we're keeping it nice and simplified. We said no statistics today.
Well, we're trying to keep it at a level where it's of use to you. Now, I'm not saying the methods aren't important because they are, but when me and Sarah were discussing this about what we go through tonight, we go through how to critically assess a paper, and we decided let's just not go there and start looking at using CASP tools and assessing it, and I think that's definitely a level where maybe in the next run that we do this, we can maybe build upon this. But we thought, let's just get our bearings round the paper first and then start thinking about, right, how can we then start picking this paper apart and actually critically assessing this. So that's going to be where our heads were with this. So for some of you, this is going to be very basic, but for some of you might not have looked at this in a long time, or
for the first time,
maybe. So we want to break down the barriers of this and really help you be able to get onto PubMed or one of the other databases and feel good about, right, I'm going to search and I'm going to look for the most up-to-date research that's specific to whatever it is you're looking for, and that information is there right at your fingertips, and feel very comfortable about doing that and actually getting some good information out of it that you can use. So the method section, essentially, it just includes is the type of study, the sample size, so how many people are in the study, right? The data collection method, so how did they collect the data? Was it in person? Was it a survey that was filled out? Was it, for me, I'm going to have patients come into the lab. How was the data collected? Was it data that was already there? Was it NHS data? So all of that will be relevant depending on what you're looking for. And then how did they analyse that information? Now, at this point, I appreciate that's probably just like, oh God, your eyes are glazing over, right? But how things are then analysed, all of that, if we were starting to think about critically appraising that all really becomes like, actually, how good is that evidence? How would I have done it that way? Or is that the best way? Or, so these things are important. But at this point, just know that there's different ways to do studies, and that is what your method section is. It's telling you what they did, who the participants were, how many there were, and how they've collected this and how they've then analysed this. So it's giving you what they did. So that's your method section, basically, in a very simplistic way.
Yeah, and I think like when I'm looking, so say like that, if I'm looking through a paper for something I have a question about on clinic, I'm not going to lie to you, the methods is probably one of the last sections I look over, because I'm grabbing information, as we said, background information from the introduction, and then I'm looking at other sections that we'll come to now before I go through the methodology. So again, at this point, just know it's there. There is important points to it, but it's, again, at this point, it's just to have a look through it and recognize what it is.
Yeah, and you see stuff like this, right? This would make your eyes water, even
me. I'd cry,
like all the equations, right? So do not let this put you off. You don't
No.
need to be a mathematician, right? But this does need to be in there. So for me, when I'm, yes, there's a biomechanics aspect to my PhD, but I'm not a statistician. I'm not a mathematician. There's people in the university that help me with that. I go to them and say, here is what I'm doing. Here is what I'm wanting to analyze. And they come up with all this, not me. I
Yeah.
just need to know that that's the right thing to do. So please don't think that you have to be some mad genius. You don't, but it's important that if you're looking at this level, that I mean, you would know what all that meant, but you're not expected to know. You're not expected to a math. Can't speak tonight, saying it. A math
Yeah.
genius. There we
I
go.
know. No, absolutely. And I do remind people that as well. Like, it's our job to interpret these findings. And, that's where our expertise come in. But it's also great to, the more you look at them, the more you can be aware of different methodology, and you can kind of go, okay, that's the stats part, and you can kind of skip that if you want, or you can look into it if it's your thing. It's just to be aware of it.
You take what it does depend on the context of you using it. So I was just about to say you take what you need out of it, but it depends on the context of how you're using that.
It depends is your favorite term today.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry, everybody. Right, but if you were reading this, so for me in my clinic, I'm looking at, right, what's the best protocol? What's the best evidence that's out there? That is out there, even if it's not brilliant. What can I find? Where can I look to get this that will help me build the best protocol that I can for my patients? Right, that's it. I don't need to be a mathematician to do that. I just need to be able to interpret the results.
Yeah. So results section. I actually like a results section in the way that I like how it's written very much to the point. It's the least fluffiest part of a paper. And as I said, it's all about how you interpret those results. So in the next section, but the more I'm looking at them, the better I'm getting. But historically, results, I would have ran away.
I know, yeah, because it's full of tables and figures and graphs, and kinematics, and all this stuff that you might think, oh, what does that all mean? Usually, what you'll find in terms of results, your results will be displayed in a few different ways. So they
Yeah.
might display it like this in here, or they might display it in tables or charts. So don't worry. You might be a visual person where you like to look at this, or you might be no, actually I want to read about it. So you don't necessarily need to look at the charts and the tables, but essentially the results just of a paper just give you the results of
Yeah.
whatever it is they've been doing. That's it. It just basically gives you the results of the study, the findings of the study, and it will show you that in graphs, in tables, and it's just there to illustrate the results. That is it.
Yeah, and I sometimes like the method. I'll pass that section out and then come back to it if I
Yeah.
need. So
That's important, Sarah. Actually,
yeah,
you've just got an absolute cracker there. Cracker.
it was you
I'm
one.
tired
It was you one.
cracker. So, but Sarah said something there that's excellent, is that I sometimes come back to that, or I read that bit first. When you're reading a paper, you don't read it
One
like
to five. Yeah, no.
no, you go to the sections. So papers will, how we're going through this tonight with your abstract, your introduction, your methods, your results, your discussion, your conclusion, and your references. Those are your main points of every paper that you read. Will have those sections. I very often will go straight to the conclusion
Yeah,
or the
just more
discussion.
discussion. Yeah.
Oh, I don't sit and read it all, I can
No.
assure you. Very rare that I will read a full paper. If it's an absolute Bobby Dazzler.
Yeah, or if you're going to base most of your, say most of your protocol on it, or most of your assignment on it, yes, you'll go back and read it.
Or
But
some people's
once we go through this, we might even just give an idea of how we might hop, skip, and jump through a paper.
Yeah, oh God. Like, so don't think for a second you're expected to read all this.
No,
You
no.
can, but nobody does, right? As researchers, that's not what we're doing, right? We're not like God, like no. You're just taking out of this what you need, and then certain, as Sarah was saying, certain papers that where there's a lot of meat in it, there's a lot of
Yeah.
juice in it, there's stuff that's actually, this is excellent for what I'm needing. Or, for example, I'm currently doing a systematic review. So if I've got the papers that I've searched for that are going to be part of that systematic review, those papers I will dissect within an inch of their lives because I
Yeah.
need to. But I wouldn't be doing that for every paper.
No.
So the next stage is the discussion.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but I actually go from the abstract to the discussion findings.
So I'll always read the abstract because it
Yeah.
tells me whether or not I want to read the paper.
Yeah.
It does. Then I'll usually, it's usually either the conclusion or the discussion. Like, it
Yeah.
depends on what I'm in. But yeah, it's certainly I go from the abstract right to the end.
Right to the end. And the
Yeah.
main reason being is that, as we mentioned earlier, is that your discussion or your conclusion, again, depending on the name of the paper or whichever, what it does is it discusses the findings, it interprets the results, and it tells you what they found, which ultimately you've seen their question. The question is what you want, and that's what they have at the end of the paper. So that's why you just got to scroll through to see, okay, what do they find, and is that relevant to what I need to know? Would you agree, Sarah?
Yeah, it's a really nice bit of the paper because it just cuts out all the fluff. So you technically could read nothing else
Yeah.
and just go straight there, because it will give you the full. They interpret the results in there, they discuss the implications of it, and they talk about the limitations of the study.
Yeah.
So, like, what was good, what was bad, what could have been better, and they talk about future research where there's gaps in it. So it gives you everything really you need's in there.
I like as well that in the discussion, so say right away you're going, okay, say your PRP protocol, you went down to the discussion and it discussed the different findings, and you're going, okay, this is really helpful. But as well as that, in a discussion, it also compares it to other studies. So right away, you now have a couple of more papers literally looking at what you're looking at that are comparing and contrasting. And it's giving you if it's similar or different than that. So I suppose they're kind of why I like a discussion and kind of skip to it, as I said.
Yeah, it's definitely the meatiest bit of the paper. But you could quite literally just go straight there. So it's a part of your paper that you would want to go to. Now I'm just looking for the conclusion in this. So it's went to acknowledgements. I can't find anything. There we are.
Sometimes it puts discussion and conclusion in the same. Yeah.
So let's see if we can find, just to keep it nice and tidy for you all. So there we go. That's what it would normally look like. So you can see how small the conclusion is, tiny. But again, it just gives, it rounds off the paper. It dots the I's and crosses the T's and crosses the I. We got it right the first.
And then you made a point earlier about the reference list, and I thought that was absolutely brilliant as well, because literally you just said, look, you'll see the references for the background information and used in the discussion, and they're all there for you.
Yeah, this to me is gold dust, right? Actually, especially if you're, it doesn't really, I suppose, matter. Even as a clinician, I would go and dissect this, like if it was something I was really wanting to get into. What I want to show them at this point, Sarah, don't panic. I know Michael was like, oh, Sarah Jane, try not to kill everybody with your, I get excited about this. Clearly, I don't get out. Right. What I want to show you is here, and this, see if you're actually studying just now, take note of this. This will show you, Sarah's like, oh, let's see this.
I'm a postgrad assignment, so come on.
Let's do it, yeah. So basically, right, So normally what you would have to do if you were interested in something, right, the amount of work that you have to put into this is disgusting. So you would go way up and you'd be like, oh, that's a good reference there. You would check the reference, you'd go way down here. Then you'd be cutting, pasting that and searching it in Google and whatever else and try to find the reference paper. And it takes forever, right?
Yeah, that's my Friday nights. Yeah, okay,
Right.
next.
It's an absolute bore, right? And it takes forever. Let me introduce you all to Research Rabbit. Hello. Right. So what this is, people, right? So this is the sadness of my life.
No,
Right.
this is brilliant. Stop it.
What we've got in here, this is my Research Rabbit. This is my systematic review, my biomechanical background reading, and my medical ultrasound reading. Right. So I've got my papers in the Rabbit.
Yeah.
And I basically just found them. Now, let me show you what this does. So here's a paper, Ultrasound Features of Achilles Enthesitis, Psoriatic Arthritis, a systematic review. And this was, I'm sure this was done by Amy. It was, yes, from GCU. So here is Amy's paper. It's a systematic review. And what this does, when I click on that paper, right, it shows me that all the references, right, I can literally see there's her paper and I can see all the associated papers from
wow.
So I can click here, and then if I want to go, oh, who's that in 2016, I can then bring that objective up, and you can see this is basically just giving me the wee abstract of that paper.
Yeah.
Oh, that's of interest. Oh, let's just jump in there. And that takes me to PubMed, right to it. Oh, my goodness. I can see similar work. I can see the citations, where it's been referenced. Oh, come on. If you don't get excited over that.
Now, again, this is going to be probably more, I'm thinking, when you have assignments, I'm like, oh my God, this would help my life so much. But,
see, for finding papers, this is, oh my God. I wish I had this for my master's. Yeah.
If you're dipping your toe in, please, please don't worry. We are normal in real life. And just because you like research doesn't mean you have to be like us. But these are definitely tools that any of my students that are watching, this will be something really, really helpful for you guys to take part in, to set up your own rabbit apps.
Research Rabbit. What is it? researchrabbitapp.com. It's just a way to find papers. Okay. It helps you find similar work, later work, and it will help you just find more papers and how they're all linked. It will save you a disgusting amount of time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So then, Sarah Jane, what would be your, I know we talked about this earlier. So if we were just to summarize, so now that we've kind of gone through all the areas, you know, what is a brief summary about what's in each part and things, how would you, I suppose, if you were looking at a paper, how would you jump around the paper, or what would you kind of, what are your steps for reading kind of thing?
Right. So if I'm, depending on what I'm doing, there we go, depends.
Sorry. Okay, you're in your clinic and you're looking at a treatment option for something.
Right.
Sorry, that's very vague.
What's this? The relevant ultrasound examination. Right, here we go. Let's see what this is all about. So what is this? The relevance of ultrasound examination of the foot and ankle in patients with RA. Right, a literature. Do we not just have that open?
It's following you around.
Clearly, I'm wanting this. Right. Okay. The impact of rheumatoid arthritis and foot function. Right.
Brilliant. Yeah, we see that all on.
Here we go. Right. So if for this, I'd be reading this because I need to get my head around this. I'm building my study protocols, or I'm working with rheumatoid patients, and I want to have a better understanding of how rheumatoid arthritis is affecting foot function in people based on the stage of their disease.
Yeah.
Right. So some people that might have just been diagnosed. So if it's under 2 years, that's classed as early rheumatoid, and anything kind of after is mid to late. So I would generally always start with the abstract. So you can see here, that I've got this here. I've got this. I usually will just go foot involvement, right? Okay, methods. Nah, I'm not really reading that. Conclusion analysis of ducts is small. So I'm literally here, right? And then I'll go, right, okay. Then I'll scroll down. Yep, not interested. Okay, that's all lovely. And then I'll look to, where are we?
Yeah, just down a bit. You just skipped it. Yeah.
There's been an increase in, that's okay, good. And then I'll go from here. Then I'll usually start looking at, so I'll have a wee look at this, see this stuff here. So I'm quite interested in this. What did they look at? They looked at the kinematics. What did they look at? What were the variables they looked at? So that's important to me, but it might not be important to you. So I want to look at, did they look at, there's no vertical excursion on that, right? Okay. I want to look at terminal stands. What did they do? So I'd be breaking, depending on what I'm finding, that would then tell me, right, how much do I want to then read further. For me, this paper would be useful because it would help me find standardized protocols for my research methods. So if I'm building out my protocols for my study, I need to look at what's been done and how good that is, the quality of that. So for my clinic, right, so if I was reading this with my clinician head on, I would go straight to here. Background. Small joint inflammation in the hands and feet. So my research head, I probably wouldn't go near that area, right? Because I kind of already know that, or I've already got that bit. Whereas if I had in my clinic and I'm trying to just, how does this affect these patients? Then what could I do to make this easier? What tools have I got in my toolbox as a clinician to help these patients? So I would go here into the background because that would give me that background information about this rheumatoid arthritis and what joints it affects and how it's destructing them and where and when and all of that stuff. So it would just give me different information, but it depends what hat I'm wearing, where I go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, because that's what, again, it's to look at what's it important for. So so then you've read your discussion or the background, sorry, and then would you then hop into the discussion, or where would you go then with your clinician hat on?
So depending on what I was doing, so if I was, so with this is quite as a clinician, right, the impact of rheumatoid arthritis and foot function in early stages of the disease. So I would possibly go down into some of the methods, like how many, so there was only 12 patients, right? So I'd maybe take that into consideration, that it's a small sample size. I'd be thinking, right, okay, so I would be taking with a bit of a pinch of salt what I'm seeing here. I'd maybe start looking at how they've analysed. So it's usually motion capture, so 3D analysis, that would be a research standard. So I'd be looking at that. Now I have motion capture in my private practice, 3D analysis. So I'd maybe be looking at what they've looked at, what actually they've analysed and how they've done it. So I might go into that detail. But again, it just depends what it is I'm needing a hand with, or what I'm looking for and what I'm trying to do. For you, it might just be something like treating a fungal nail. What is the best treatment protocols out there? Maybe you just want to enhance your knowledge of that. So finding papers that are relevant to that, and then even going on to somewhere like Research Rabbit, right, where you've found a paper that's really good, and then you think, oh, I'd like to find more of these papers or do a wee bit more further reading. That would be then link out all those papers. So very instantly you would have access to quality that based on what you've been looking at. Obviously I can't say whether it's quality or not, because it would depend on what you've pulled up. But in terms of being able to find and then enhance your knowledge, it's all there. So it's about, I would just urge you to go and just experiment and start looking at the paper. So just look at read the abstract. Does that entice you to read more? Then if it does, maybe have a wee look at the introduction. And okay,
especially if you're unfamiliar with the area, definitely look at the introduction.
I honestly do believe the introduction is a fantastic place to go, especially if it's a something that you're just maybe building your knowledge on.
Yeah. Yep.
It's,
Or
it,
want to refresh.
yeah, it does just give you, it's just invaluable. It really, really is. I think we don't realise how much is out there for free. Most of these papers are open source. So you've got access to them. I mean, this one, open access, you don't need to pay for that. There's some that are behind a paid wall, but lots of them aren't. And
Yeah.
the
That's
Journal
really
of Ankle Research, JFAR, I think all of them are open source. I'm sure JFAR. So JFAR is the Royal College of Podiatry's journal. So database basically. So you've got PubMed and JFAR articles will be on that. But even if you go on and just search, they'll all be open access. So you can go and just read them.
And I can't think of the name of it now, but I know there's a website as well that if there was a paper you couldn't get sometimes, like because it's behind a paywall, I'll come back
Yeah.
and find that.
There's ways to
Yeah.
do it. Or if you know somebody that's a university, just ping them a wee message and they'll be able to get
Yeah.
it for you. So all you need is your university login and that will give you access to every paper. There was one that I don't know what it was. I was between basically my master's and my PhD and I wanted to do some reading. And I was like, oh, for goodness sake, and I couldn't get access to the paper. So I just like basically sent a whole pile of the DOI numbers to one of my friends who's a student. I was like, can you go get me those papers, please?
Yeah.
I'll fly away. Yeah. So there's usually somebody that you know that if you kind of get access. But yeah, there's no, I don't have there isn't a right or wrong with this, Sarah. Would you agree with that? It's not.
No, definitely. I would agree. Like, as I said, the whole idea is, look, get your title, do your search, get your title, read the abstract. Are you going to look into it? Are you not? Are you familiar with it? Maybe hop on to the introduction. Are you not? Or like, if you are really familiar with it, maybe you can go straight to the discussion conclusion. And I think once you start doing that, slowly you will start creeping into the methodology and the results. But I think they're a really good place to start. Maybe they're that easier bit of reading and you're getting a bang for your buck because you're finding out kind of that background information or you're getting the finding you were looking for. So that's where I would start and then work my way back from there.
Fantastic. I think that it's just getting going, isn't it? Get going, give it a try. Please let us know how you're getting on.
Yeah.
But that's it. It doesn't need to be complicated. And hopefully that reduces any barriers that were maybe there. We thought this would be better than doing how to critically appraise a paper. Right. Michael is sending us stuff. Are you reading so right, student show next week, surgery of the week after. What's this? Surgery the week after, views at the end of the month. That's what's coming up. I meant to. That was terrible. So I have to say that Michael should just jump on and see this. He's much better at this. Just jump on. I know.
So just trying to avoid coming from the camera there. So coming up next week, we have the student show. So we're going to be joined by students from Southampton, the fabulous Lucy Beaumont, and the two sisters, Freya and Gaia from Salford, and they'll be talking all things student podiatry. Week after that, we've been joined by Claire Freeman, podiatric surgeon, and the fantastic Nicola Burt, who is then they're going to be looking at another aspect of surgery. If you haven't seen any of their past shows, their one on HAV and on hallux limitus was a tour de force. And if you are looking at that, I highly recommend it. And then coming up at the end of the month, we have the legends that are Zoe Wilson and Liam McManus, being joined by guests to argue over what is best, minimally invasive surgery or traditional surgery. What's the pros and cons, and how should we be looking going forward? So some fantastic shows coming up as we rejoin this live series. And then you guys are back in 4 weeks' time. So
I'm going to just ping up on our chat I am like the weirdly organized one.
One thing I'll add while you're doing that as well is you were saying there about getting hold of a paper. Don't forget, if you ever get stuck, just ping the author a shout. The number of times the author will happily have a PDF and pop it into the post to you or pop an email over to you. And you're absolutely right. JFAR is an open access journal. So all of the JFAR papers, and if you haven't yet and you're a student, do check out their social media. In fact, I was just, while you were going through that, checking out the latest paper that was popped up there, looking at the effects of shell thickness versus medial wedges on thickness of the longitudinal arches. So do check that out. There's lots of interesting papers that come up. Absolutely, guys, ladies, tour de force. So I will jump off now and let you wrap up. But thank you very much.
Oh, awesome! Cheers, Michael. So show 4, Michael, I'm sure did say the date there.
4 weeks,
something like that, is when we're going to be assessing the quality of the paper. So, and then show 5 is getting your head around the stats, the 4th of April. Thank you, Michael. 4th of April is the next time us absolutely amazing research people.
Pushing research, yeah.
Hopefully this is not bored all to tears. And then, so show 4, which is the next one, we're going to talk a wee bit about quality. We'll try not to bore you, right? I'll maybe find some more lovely stuff, techie stuff to excite you.
Definitely, yeah.
I'll keep you informed. And then the show 5, which is on the 2nd of May, is get your head around the stats. So we'll help you just understand the stats a wee bit more. And then show 6 is applying evidence with your patients. That is absolutely perfect. And that's on the 6th of June. So the next 3 months. Sarah, are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, the stats one now will be tough just to keep everyone involved, but no, it'll definitely be helpful. And I know some of my own students are dreading stats, so I think if we can simplify it, it'll be really helpful.
We'll keep it simple. Simple. But thank you so much, Sarah. It's always good fun.
I know.
Hopefully not bored everybody to tears, but thank you so much, because it's been quite busy. But please see if you've any questions, just hit us up. I don't know about you, Sarah, like I get quite a few private messages through. I mean, I'm always open.
I love it. I love help. I love like helping out other podiatrists, growing our profession. I'm always banging off questions to people. Totally. I just think that's how we keep this profession moving. So
totally, and we need to be like that, don't we? It's that you'd be surprised at how open people's doors are, right? So if you're this week, actually, I was helping another podiatrist, master's stuff, do an advanced search, and that's just how it is. You take that time out your day and you'll do it. So please, like, if you're ever like stuck, just reach out. We're fairly normal, most of the time. But if you have any questions, please fire them up, and we're going to go and probably get your dinner. Were you playing hockey tonight?
No, I was supposed to have rugby. I sprained my ankle in our match on Saturday. So yeah, it's nice black and blue, and I'm trying not to self-diagnose, so it's great. The joys of sport.
Well, do you know what? You wouldn't have it any other way. Just without the injuries would be good.
Yeah, it's all part of it.
Right. Well, hopefully it'll heal fast and you can get back onto that rugby pitch soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the 4th of April. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.